Tanzania, one of East Africa's most politically stable nations for decades, is now facing a moment of reckoning. As the country held its general election on Wednesday, the streets of Dar es Salaam, its largest city and economic heart, erupted in violent demonstrations. The unrest marked a sharp contrast to Tanzania's long reputation for peace, signaling that the democratic hopes many once had may be slipping away. In Dar es Salaam, chaos unfolded as protesters clashed with police. Social media videos captured scenes of young demonstrators hurling stones, clouds of tear gas filling the air, and a petrol station set ablaze amid the tension. According to data from NetBlocks, a global internet observatory, the government disrupted internet service nationwide, effectively cutting citizens off from sharing information in real time. Analysts said the blackout aimed to suppress reports of violence and control the flow of election-related content. The atmosphere in the city, home to more than 7 million people, was tense. Many voters feared approaching polling stations as security forces moved through neighborhoods to contain the demonstrations. At the center of this storm stands President Samia Suluhu Hassan, Tanzania's first female head of state. Once hailed internationally as a reformer who softened the authoritarian legacy of her predecessor, the late John Magufuli, Hassan now faces accusations of tightening control over political life. Hassan assumed office in March 2021 following Magufuli's sudden death. Initially, she took steps that suggested a more open era, lifting the long-standing ban on political rallies, inviting exiled opposition leaders to return, and promising media reforms. For a brief moment, she became a symbol of hope for democratic renewal, not just in Tanzania, but across East Africa. However, over time, her administration reversed many of those early liberal policies. Observers say her government has presided over a sharp increase in repression, arbitrary arrests, and the silencing of critics, particularly as the 2025 election approached. Wednesday's election was widely expected to hand Hassan a decisive victory. Not necessarily because of popular enthusiasm, but because major opposition figures were excluded from running. The Chadema party, Tanzania's main opposition, was disqualified by the Electoral Commission months before the vote, following the arrest of its vice chair, Tundu Lissu, who was charged with treason and cybercrime. Another key rival, Luhaga Mpina, leader of ACT-Wazalendo, was also barred from the race. Their removal left Hassan facing only minor candidates from small or new parties with limited national reach. Analysts described this contest as the least competitive election since Tanzania reintroduced multi-party politics in 1992. In the weeks leading up to the polls, reports of abductions and disappearances surged. Human rights groups documented the kidnappings of activists, journalists, and even members of the ruling party who turned against the government. Among the most notable cases was Humphrey Polepole, a former ambassador and member of the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party who had become a vocal critic of Hassan. He vanished earlier in the month under mysterious circumstances, and his family reported he had been taken by unidentified individuals. According to United Nations experts, more than 200 cases of enforced disappearances have been recorded in Tanzania since 2019. In June, the UN called on the Tanzanian government to end the practice and investigate reports of torture and extrajudicial detentions involving political opponents and journalists. The government has denied such accusations. Police officials dismissed the reports as staged incidents, though investigations ordered by the president herself have never been made public. Deus Valentine, head of the Center for Strategic Litigation, said Tanzania stands at a crossroads. Civil society leaders argue that this election could determine whether the nation slips further into one-party dominance or witnesses the rise of civil resistance. Observers noted growing voter apathy, particularly among young people who make up more than 60% of Tanzania's 65 million population. Many said they saw little reason to vote when outcomes appeared predetermined. Still, more than 37 million citizens were registered to participate in the election, which included votes for the presidency, members of parliament, and local representatives. Long lines formed early in the morning, especially in urban centers like Dar es Salaam, Arusha, and Mwanza. But as violence flared, turnout began to drop, and election monitors reported widespread intimidation near polling stations. Tanzania's ruling party, CCM, has governed since the country gained independence from Britain in 1961, making it one of Africa's longest-standing political machines. The party's influence extends across government institutions, security forces, and local administration, leaving little space for meaningful opposition. In the 2020 election, Magufuli secured a landslide victory with 84.4% of the vote, while Lissu finished a distant second with 13%. That margin, critics argued, reflected not genuine support, but a system heavily skewed in favor of CCM through electoral manipulation and media control. Under Hassan, CCM continues to dominate. Her campaign emphasized continuity and stability, promising to strengthen healthcare, expand education, and promote economic empowerment. Tanzania's GDP growth has averaged around 5% annually under her administration, one of the highest rates in sub-Saharan Africa, with inflation staying below 4% according to World Bank data. Supporters say these figures prove she has delivered progress, particularly in infrastructure and social programs. Yet critics insist economic success cannot compensate for shrinking political freedoms. Analysts at the Institute for Security Studies described the 2025 election as unfolding in a sharply polarized environment, where civic space has been narrowed and opposition leaders face constant harassment. They warn that the lack of genuine political competition could fuel future instability, especially if citizens lose faith in the ballot as a vehicle for change. Nicodemus Mind, a Tanzanian political researcher with ISS, said the exclusion of Chadema and ACT-Wazalendo effectively eliminated checks on CCM's power. He argued that such dominance without democratic balance risks turning Tanzania into a de facto one-party state once more. Despite international criticism, Hassan remains popular among segments of the population, particularly rural voters who credit her for expanding access to electricity, clean water, and digital services. Her administration also gained praise for keeping inflation low amid global price shocks and for maintaining Tanzania's reputation as an economic success story in East Africa. During her final campaign rallies, she pledged to focus on inclusive growth and promised that every Tanzanian would have a meaningful role in the nation's development. Her manifesto emphasized job creation for youth, modernization of agriculture, and the expansion of women's access to business opportunities. For many Tanzanians, however, these promises are overshadowed by fear and frustration. The wave of disappearances, the arrests of opposition figures, and the violent suppression of protest have created an atmosphere of uncertainty. International observers, including representatives from the African Union and the East African Community, have called for transparency in the vote counting process, warning that irregularities or prolonged blackouts could trigger further unrest. As night falls over Dar es Salaam, the streets remain tense. Burned-out vehicles and the smell of smoke linger as a reminder of the day's chaos. Many citizens are left wondering what kind of Tanzania will emerge after this election, one that deepens repression or one that sparks a renewed demand for freedom. For now, all eyes are on President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Whether she consolidates power or faces a growing movement of defiance will determine not just the future of her presidency, but the direction of democracy in one of Africa's most influential nations.